we do lose a lot of ourselves to trauma. We lose it. And there is no getting it back, unfortunately. And that's where that grief is loving that person you were and grieving that that is no longer who you are. And on the other side, you have this opportunity now to be someone else. You know, you can reclaim parts of yourself that are still there, you know, because trying to bring back parts of yourself that are gone is just going to hurt. But being able to recognize what parts of yourself you still have and utilizing those and growing those on top of finding new things. I've had some wonderful interactions with people since getting out, and it's really changed my perspective on a lot of things and really helped build me to where I am, because I've been allowed to practice being myself and letting my mask down, being weird. God, it's so much fun to be weird and not like worry about, you know, getting yelled at for it or anything. Like, I can just do dumb stuff and it's funny. And like, the people in my life now, they enjoy it. They celebrate my weird. They call me feral and deranged, and they say it with love, you know? And like, I never thought I would get that. I never thought that there would be people in my life that celebrated the parts of me that are weird.
It's pride. Like, I don't want to live in a shelter. I don't want my kids seeing me live like this. I don't want help. Nobody wants help. You know, everybody want to do it themselves. Everybody want to make it themselves. Then they're like afraid to not have money. They're afraid to not have things, you know? It's the pride. But you got to think, this is just a step. It's not going to be like this forever. This is just a step that you took to get out of a certain situation. You're only like that. You're only without money. You're only staying in the shelter because you were in an abusive relationship that you left. You had all those things. You can always get those things back. So that's what I had to think. Those things are just things. Money can go and you can make some more money. Get another job. It's fine, you know? Yeah, and then a lot of people think of bills. Oh, I got this bill. Oh my God, what am I going to do? They panic. But you just stay calm and just like, look, I'm going to pay my bills when I get a job. Just let them know, you know, and then you just move forward.
The idea of people not getting it is real, and it's very isolating. And that makes you not want to talk, even if they were supportive, but you wouldn't understand, so why waste my breath trying to describe this? Like, it's hard enough to live it, let alone to recount it. It's like a prism, you know, and there's so many different facets of it. And that's just so weighty. And even reading material on grief. I actually read a really good book recently on it called Resilient Grieving. But it was the first book that I resonated with, because everybody says, here are the 5 stages of grief that you have to go through, and you cycle through over and over and over and over again. And it's like, oh, I mean, never-ending merry-go-round that I never want to get on ever, you know? So this other book was super helpful in just like some practical ways to grieve. And it's hard to hold the space to actually carry the weight of grieving and accept that, and the time to do that. You know, I know my therapist and I have talked about that too, that like sometimes when you just need to fall apart, you can't actually. You have to hold together for your kids or for your job or whatever. And so it's like, okay, push pause button on that. And then like, when you get home tonight, then you just fall apart and let that go. I think if we grow properly, then we learn to hold space for grief in a very different way. Overwhelming feelings and negative feelings. Like initially, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I would be like, you don't want those things. You kind of push them away. And then you grow to a stage of like, okay, maybe they're there. And then, okay, they're here. And I think ultimately you want to move to a stage where they're welcome, which is like awful. But they don't go away, So I think that grief slows the process down for that transformation to take place and for us to really look at ourselves and see, sure, there's what's been done to us, but the greater grieving is probably what we've allowed to be done to us. That's what we can control.
I first started this advocacy thing and lobbying because I wanted to help. I wanted to help others and don't want any other woman to ever have to go through what I've been through. So I started off on this venture as wanting to change the world for everyone else. Not realizing that every time I spoke, every time I gave, it lessened the weight on my shoulders. It got some of that gunk out of me that I had stuffed for so long, because there is no rehabilitation in prison. It's just a warehouse for people. There's no therapy. They control the masses with mental medication. So for 17 years, I had a lot of stuff I stuffed. And a lot of stuff I had even forgotten about. And then I found through sharing, it started lessening that burning in the pit of my soul. And it started lessening the weight on my shoulders. And I even though I sleep okay, I slept better. And I felt more at peace with myself. And I even think I started to like myself a little more. Because I got it out. And when I share with you, the pain isn't all mine anymore. And whether you roll your eyes and walk away, like, oh, God, I don't want to hear this, or you embrace me with support, it doesn't matter. I still got it out. And you can't unhear what I said. But I know that every time I talk, I get more of that shit out of me. Because I wasn't supposed to have it all in the first place. And sharing it is just that. Many hands make a heavy load light. And that's how it feels. So I started off doing it for everybody else. Through the middle, a lot of it was my own healing journey. Doing it for myself and for empowerment and validation and all those words. And now I'm so comfortable in my skin and in my presence that I can do it for other people again knowingly. I may have helped somebody tonight. I may have related with someone. I may have let somebody know they're not alone. Because the people who talk, that's great. But the people who don't talk, that's scary.
I think that whatever it is I tell myself is just too quiet for me to hear, because there have been days that I have not wanted to get out of the bed. And it wasn't someone that said, come on, you got to get up, you got to do this, you got to go to work. It wasn't that. There was something. It had to be me. It was only me in the room. And it's actually one of my personal pet peeves to hear is that everything takes time. But when someone's in emotional pain, reminding them that they're going to be in emotional pain for a lot longer isn't very helpful. As much as hearing it pisses me off, I really think that it's time. It's not just time, though. It's time to go through it. You know, I mean, even before this relationship, I struggled with mental health issues and depression and anxiety, adult ADHD. And, you know, not running from it and learning. I had a therapist once who would always say, you got to sit in it. And what the freak does that mean? Sit in what? I live it. Like, what are you talking about? And I still don't quite get what sitting in it means. But I have to feel it. As horrible as the feelings are, I have to feel it. I have to acknowledge it. If I got to write till my hand hurts, then I'll write it down. If I got to sit in my car listening to the most god-awful metal and things that you wouldn't expect me to listen to, then that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do. Essentially, it's a battle as I'm preparing mentally and emotionally preparing myself to do battle.
I think grief is like the wrecking ball that kind of smashed through the foundation. And as it did so, it stirred up all the other really strong, awful emotions. The sadness, the fear, the anger, and so much more. And at the center of it all, you know, the grief is still there. You're mourning your vulnerability. You can't feel safe around other people for a really long time, at least in my case. It's like you're mourning things you didn't know you were going to lose. You're mourning things that you didn't know you'd miss. And like I said before, you're kind of mourning the idea of this good, kind person that never existed, but you're also mourning your peace of mind.
Most of my experience as a survivor in the relationship and out of it has not felt super validated. I don't know if I would say supported though, because I got support in the way people were able to give support. But I don't think people get how to give support in a way that's helpful. I think there's a lot of, oh, the relationship ended, so now things are good, and that's not the case. Or there's a lot of like, yes, this is a bad thing, you shouldn't do this. But when you're in it, you know it's bad, but you can't not do it. I will say that I had a friend who did not ever say, leave this relationship. And after the fact, she goes, I knew you would when you could. So that was helpful. I think that the support that would have been most helpful would be, hey, here's what I see. Let me know what you need. Versus, yep, that's abuse. What are you going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. I wish there was more awareness of abuse in younger relationships. I was in my 20s, so everybody's like, oh, you're in your 20s, everybody's learning, but that doesn't mean it's not abusive.
I'm reclaiming peace, reclaiming joy, reclaiming all the things that I thought that I wasn't, reclaiming power over myself, over my thoughts, over my being and what I want to do. Because that is something that I definitely felt like I lost, like power and control over myself, and never wanting anyone to have more control over myself than I do ever again. Yeah, reclaiming and also figuring out, I would say. Because there's a part of me that likes to think that I'm reclaiming the girl that I was before the abuse. But now I just want to be better than the girl before the abuse. Because there were some parts of her that was still broken, which is why, she maybe suffered
not maybe suffered some of the things that, I went through. So just coming out healing and better, stronger, and knowing that I was never not those things, but it's definitely helped me to see I'm not my circumstances. I'm not the broken pieces that are in me. And I'm just not a bunch of the negative things that I may tell myself. I'm not that. So definitely reclaiming all that.
So one of my solutions was reaching out online, and I found support groups, and I found Facebook groups, and I found people who were in my space and in my frame of mind and had been through it or were going through it and offered strength and offered support and could say, this is how this feels and identify with me. And it was so helpful to me. It was magic almost to find those people virtually. When I get anxiety or when I would feel overwhelmed, I put together a little sensory pack. Something soft and silky that I can touch, a jar of lavender oil, and a photo of my daughter and my dog. Just think a visual, a scent, and a sensual thing, so that things that I can start to calm my nervous system with. But yeah, just anything that can get me focused back into my body and out of my head, I think is what the key is. So music and dancing, or just grooving to, a little R&B or some blues was always the best, way to get me out of a funk.
The way I tell my story has definitely changed. I don't want to focus on the ugliness because it just makes me feel ways that I don't want to feel anymore, And I think when I was in it and it was the everyday, it's like a whole different life. I feel like almost like an out-of-body experience when I think about what happened, because I'm not feeling that like raw pain anymore. It's not like it just happened yesterday. And that's only because I have separated myself from the situation for, and it's taken me a long time to heal. And I didn't think that it would take this long. In the past, what was helpful for me was to share with trusted people or whatever, that, this happened and this happened and this happened. And there was something that I know that I needed to heal by saying that, by exposing like stuff that nobody would ever know if I didn't share it. And almost to take away the heaviness of it. It's like layer by layer kind of thing that over time, like now, if someone asks or if someone starts sharing something, I don't feel compelled to go into the war story of my life. It's more like I can relate and I've been there and I know how you feel.
I used to wake up every morning and literally the first thing on my mind used to be all things negative. everything that happened. Why did this happen to me? Why did this person do this to me? Why would they ever put me through all of this? I don't deserve this. And then I would think about it over and over and over again until one day I was like, I gotta change something. And so every morning I will wake up, and I still do it now, and I put on motivational speeches in the morning and motivational speakers, and I listen to them while I'm in the shower, while I'm getting dressed, up until the point I have to wake my 3-year-old up. And for me, it sets my mind on that path of constantly staying motivated and in the right mindset.
What I realized was I was taking pebbles, right? They always say, like, take each stone off of the mountain, like take each stone away and you'll heal. And what I was doing that I realized is I was building a boulder. I took a stone and I was just rolling it and rolling it and rolling it because her story isn't public. It's the constant, what happened? What happened? What happened? And so it was like, rolling. So I wasn't dealing with grief. I was dealing with the story being told. And I thought that was healing, being able to talk about it and not cry. And then one day I was like, oh, shoot. Like, I have this massive boulder that now I need to push aside.
Grief has really impacted this healing process. I grieve the happiest time every day. I loved the life, the bigger picture life that we had. We did go on great camping trips, and I loved going to his gigs and the after parties and again, he made me laugh every single day. And I grieve that deeply. And I grieve the people that we had in our circle. Yeah, a year and a half ago, I had a totally different life. And I grieve it all the time. And it's weird to grieve something that was really harming you. I didn't know. I didn't know how harmful it was until I walked away. It is kind of like a drug in that way. It's hard. I'm leaving the city because of the grief. I can't take it. We live a mile away from each other. I see him all the time. I grieve a lot of what could have been, which again is really foolish, but I grieve not sticking up for myself sooner. And so that's another thing I grieve is this is a pattern, and why is this a pattern? And so now my therapy has kind of changed directions and started to focus on not repeating this pattern and recognizing, did I think I could take care of a severely depressed person who's tried to commit suicide before? Yeah, because my dad was a severely depressed person who tried to commit suicide before. So the insight is that I also am repeating a pattern. And he felt like home.
One thing that I would say to people who are healing from abuse is that there isn't a specific time frame that you need to be on, and that you have to take the time and space. There's not a specific calendar or a date or time to how these things work. I like to use the analogy of crawling, walking, running. And I feel like when you're first getting out of a bad situation, you're crawling because you're new, fresh to being out of it. So if you experience hardships or setbacks, whatever they might be, little or small, you don't fall that far. You're already low to the ground. When you start walking, if you fall, it's not as it's you're higher up, so it's a little bit of a harder fall. But once you're really smooth sailing and running and you caught your stride and then something hits you and sets you back, that impact of hitting can be really harsh. So just to give yourself kindness and as much space as you need, because the way you make progress and then get catapulted backwards and then make progress again, there isn't a one way that happens, and you just need to not feel defeated by it and to just stay on that course and just do what works for you. I think often when people give you advice, especially maybe somebody who was in a situation and maybe they consider themselves a survivor, maybe they have a grasp on it or not, they try to give you this advice of like, well, this is going to happen. And I think this applies to grief too. There's like this very specific way you're going to work through it. And that's just not the case. It's so individualized. And what could trigger you or set you back or throw you off or pause your healing or however you want to word it could be so specific and so unique to you that you really just need to show yourself the respect and kindness of allowing yourself to heal.
There's different stages because as you grieve, and a lot of survivors, especially ones I've talked to and myself included, as you start grieving one thing that's happened to you, other stuff comes up and it's triggered other memories. But as you heal one part of you, other parts of you get healed like by proxy. So understanding that process and not being scared of that process, it's not this length of time, it's this all-encompassing circle of a process, and you're kind of always in it, because at the end of grieving process is acceptance, but it's not the end. It's just a circle. You're just going around and around, and you need that process because you need to feel empathy for yourself. And as you grieve, the point of grieving is to trigger that self-empathy. So you might need to go through it. It's something actually beautiful to go through because it makes you feel more empowered to actually feel, wow, I went through this. That was a lot. That's a lot to go through for one person and to survive it.
How I share my story has shifted a bit over time. Right now, I think and focus on different details than before. Depending on where I am and who is involved, I change what details of my story that I share. In general, the story points remain the same. Being asked to share my story publicly has caused me anxiety. I become very emotional and sensitive when I bare my soul. I just feel exposed. In private or small groups with other survivors, I am more comfortable sharing the full story. I just know that they understand my heightened emotions because they've gone through this too. And with that shared experience, I can be truly vulnerable. I still choose to share my story publicly because of what I see in the community. I want to be a voice for survivors in the deaf community. Most deaf community members are not rolling up their sleeves to advocate in domestic violence spaces right now. We have not had a BLM type movement in the deaf community yet. We need peaceful protest and people standing up against injustices. I hope my story will inspire others in the global community to understand that they are not alone and to join us in advocating for systemic improvements. I realize many people are not aware that my culture, access, and rights have been taken from me by the system in place when sharing my story. I hope to bring awareness to this. Change takes time, and yet it can change everything.